Hello and welcome to DROIX. Today we are checking out the Neo 2021 Pro Windows Gaming Handheld. We will be unboxing it and checking out its features, then running some system and gaming benchmarks to see its performance. Let's get started with the unboxing. The Pro model has a different colour scheme to the new Neo box we showed last week. Inside is a new overlay design which details all of the features and buttons. Pause the video if you want to look into it in more detail. Next we have the Neo Pro, which we will show in more detail shortly. There's a quick start guide. Under the packaging is a 60 watts PD charger. This can be used in conjunction with the UK, Europe and Southeast Asia plug adapters. There are two USB Type-C to Type-A adapters. And last but not least, there is a USB Type-C cable. The Neo Pro measures 10.4 by 4.17 by 0.79 inches and weighs 648 grams. This is the Dark Star colour, and it's also available in Light Moon and the awesome retro theme, which we hope to show off soon. It has a 7-inch IPS multi-touch screen and runs at 1280 by 800 resolution. On the left side are the clickable left analog stick and classic D-pad. Below are four buttons, which are the rumble on off, home button, start and select. On the right side are the four gaming buttons and right analog stick. There are four shortcut buttons, which are desktop, task manager and escape. The fourth button is to toggle the on-screen keyboard or bring up IO space if you have it installed. Along the top we have the left and right shoulder and analog trigger buttons. There are the power and volume buttons, followed by the 3.5mm headphone jack. There are two USB Type-C ports. The second is a full port, which allows you to connect peripherals such as a hub for video output to your TV or monitor. On the bottom there is a second full USB Type-C port, which can also be used to connect peripherals to, such as a docking station. A brief look at the technical specifications for the Neo Pro and also compare them with the original Neo. The Pro has the AMD 4800U processor, which has 8 cores and 16 threads, running up to 4.2 GHz. Graphics are handled with a AMD Radeon featuring 8 cores running up to 1.7 GHz. There is 16 gigs of LPDDR4X, 4266 MHz dual channel RAM and 1TB of replaceable PCIe NVme SSD. For all of the benchmarks we are running at 20 watts TDP instead of the default 15. This is so we are able to compare it to other devices such as the ONEXPLAYER 1S, which has a default of 20 watts. As always, we start the benchmarks with PassMark. PassMark performs a series of tests that push the CPU, GPU, RAM and storage to their limits for maximum performance. The Neo Pro scores 5054, which is in the higher band of benchmark scores we have run on devices, a promising sign for the performance. Next we are running PCMark, which tests your more day-to-day tasks from web browsing to video conferencing and working with image and video editing. The Neo 2021 Pro scores 5343, which is in the area of the ONEXPLAYER 1S. We move on to 3DMark now, which tests the CPU and GPU together for its graphics performance. Not only is graphics used for gaming, but also for tasks such as video decoding and image editing. The Pro scores 1404. It's not the highest scores we have seen, but well above the average. Moving on to the gaming benchmarks now. We start off with Forza Horizon 4. Hopefully in our next video we will be trying Horizon 5 as it's out by the time this video is live. We are running at 1280 by 720 on the default ultra settings. The Neo Pro reaches a very impressive 47 frames per second. That's the highest in our Windows handheld benchmarks. We are running the Street Fighter V benchmark at 1920 by 1080 on the maximum graphics settings. At the end of the first match, the Pro gets an average of 32.5 frames per second. It's not the highest score in the Windows handhelds category, but definitely not the worst. Next, we are benchmarking Final Fantasy XIV at 1920 by 1080 with the highest desktop settings. The Neo Pro scores 3372 with a slightly low rating. Reducing a few graphics settings here and there should get the game up to speed just fine. For our final benchmark, we are running Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the lowest and highest graphics settings to see the difference in performance. The lowest graphics benchmark scores 58 frames per second, and the highest graphics benchmark scores 28 frames per second. This is a newer benchmark we are running, so we can't compare it to previous handhelds. A brief recap of the benchmark scores and to also compare them to the Neo 2021 and the ONEXPLAYER 1S handhelds. Naturally, the Neo Pro beats the original by a fair margin, with 12.6% difference in performance on PassMark and 32% difference on Forza Horizon 4 for example. Compared with the ONEXPLAYER 1S, which come out on top overall of the 1195 G7 based handhelds, it's a mix of who wins. In terms of performance, the Pro beats the 1S in PassMark with 23% difference and Forza Horizon 4 with 16%. But on other benchmarks it falls behind. On 3D Mark there's a 25% difference and Final Fantasy there's 25% difference. So it can depend on what games you are playing for whether or not you will get great performance. Generally, games which take advantage of multiple cores and threads will see better performance on the AMD processor than it does on the Intel. I am definitely torn between the Neo Pro and ONEXPLAYER as to which I would use every day. The Neo Pro size is just right in my opinion. It handles games very well and feels great in your hands. Whereas the 1S screen is larger and more immersive, but it's also physically larger and not as comfortable to hold or as portable in comparison. Both have their wins and losses for system and gaming performance. I feel for gaming that the 1S would overall be the better performing device for gaming in general, but for the games that are optimised for multi-cores and threads, the IA would be the ideal choice. I am still very much undecided between the two. In our next video, I will be taking a closer look at gaming and higher end console emulation. There will be plenty of actual gameplay footage to get a better understanding of the differences in overall performance. That wraps up our Neo 2021 Pro review. We hope you found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you have not already, as it really helps to grow our channel. Thanks for watching and we hope to see you back in our next video.